Alright, so today we're going to be talking about the triangle midsegment theorem. I know that in one of our in-class questions we briefly mentioned this. Okay, we went through a problem, but I want to go ahead and talk about it. That way we have a more formal understanding of it. So, the midsegment of a triangle. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to find the midpoint of each side of the triangle. So here, here, and here. And you connect all three of those in the form of a triangle. Okay, so in the inside of this triangle is actually called the midsegment triangle. So this right here is your midsegment triangle. Kind of looks a little like a Triforce for those of you that like to play Zelda. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so the interior triangle is your midsegment triangle, and then the midsegments are XY, YZ, and XZ. Alright, so first things, before we go into the actual statement of what the theorem is, I want to go ahead and do a practice problem. So we're doing this a little backwards from what we used to, but first thing I want you to do is go ahead and plot the points for X, Y, and Z. And then 3. And then I want you to go ahead and connect those with a line. Alright, so that is our triangle. Let's go ahead and label that X, Y, and Z. Now it says M and N are the midpoints of XZ and YZ. We need to show that MN is parallel to XZ and that MN is going to be half the length of XY. So the first thing we need to do is find the coordinates of MN. Alright, so we know M is the midpoint of XZ. So we need to find the midpoint of line XZ. Alright, now the points for X are -1, 8, and Z is 3, -4. Alright, so that's X and that's Z. Now recall that the midpoint formula is where you add the X's, divide by 2, comma, add the Y's, divide by 2. So you should remember the midpoint formula. So I'm going to put my X's here, so -1 and 3. And then my Y's are 8 plus -4. Alright, so -1 plus 3 divided by 2 should give me 1. And 8 plus a -4 divided by 2 is 2. So this right here is our point N. Alright, so now we need to find point N. So an N is the midpoint of YZ. So Y is 9, 2, and Z is 3, -4. So let's go ahead and plug it into the midpoint formula. X is added together, divide by 2, Y's added together, divide by 2, and then you should get 6, -1. 9, 10, 11, 12 divided by 2 is 6, -2 over 2 is -1. Alright, so let's go back and plot those points if you would. So, and that was point N. So we have point N is 6, -1. So right there. And M we said was 1, 2, right there. Alright, so now let's go ahead and connect those with a line. There we go. So now our job is to find out the slope and the length of it, because we first want to say if MN is parallel to XY, then they'll have the same slope. And then we can use the distance formula to figure out if MN is half the length of XY. Alright, so let's go ahead and deal with the slopes. Okay, remember the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Alright, so let's find the slope of MN. Remember that point M was 1, 2. Point N was 6, -1. And then X is -1, 8. And Y is 9, 2. Alright, so what I should see here is the same slope. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So what I get for the slope here is -3/5. Okay, because 2 plus 1 is 3. 1 minus 6 is a -5. So -5 over +3 is -3/5. Alright, now do the same thing for xy. Alright, 2 minus 8 over 9 minus -1 gives me -3/5. Okay, because on top I get -6, on the bottom I get +10. Simplifies to -3/5. You just type that in your calculator. Since they have the same slope, they have to be parallel. So, since the slopes are the same, I know that MN is parallel to XY. Alright, now we were told to compare the lengths. So let's go ahead and compare the lengths. Remember that the distance formula is the square root, really long square root, of x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. Now I'll give you this formula because it's on your formula sheet. But you do need to memorize slope and midpoint if you have not done so already. Alright, now remember the points for M and N. So M was 1, 2. N is 6, -1. And then we also want to find the distance of xy. So x is -1, 8. And y is 9, 2. Alright, so the slope, or excuse me, the distance for here would be 6 minus 1 squared plus -1 minus 2 squared, all that under your square root, which will then simplify to the square root of 34. Alright, and then the distance of xy would be the square root of 9 minus -1 squared plus 2 minus 8 squared, which simplifies to 2 square roots of 34. So what we can see here is that square root of 34 is going to be 1/2 of 2 square roots of 34. So we can see that MN is going to be half the length of XY. There we go. Alright, so what this means for us is if you go back over here to this triangle, MN is a mid-segment based on the definition, and the mid-segment will be parallel to the only side it doesn't touch, and it will be half the length of the side it doesn't touch. That's going to be very important when we talk about similar triangles, so just keep that in mind. Okay, now this actually holds true for every triangle. There are 3 mid-segments for every triangle, and the mid-segments will always be parallel to the side they don't touch and half its length. Alright, so let's make an application out of this. We have to find the length of BD. Okay, well BD is a mid-segment of a triangle, and the side it doesn't touch is AE. If AE is 17, then BD must be 1/2 of that side length. So it would be 1/2 of 17, which would be either 17/2 or 8.5, depending on if it said leave it as a decimal or as a fraction. Now the way that I know that this is a mid-segment is you can look. Okay, here and here, this is a midpoint. Here and here are equidistant, so this is a midpoint. So that means that BD is a mid-segment of the triangle. Alright, find the measure of JL. Alright, JL is here. Oops. I'm not great at drawing that line, am I? Alright, and the midsegment that corresponds to JL is PN. So PN is 36, then JL must be twice that. So PN is 1/2 of JL. If PN is 36, all I have to do is multiply both sides by 2. JL is 72 units long, whatever those units may be. So they threw in a lot of extra numbers to try to confuse you, but don't be confused by that. Alright, our goal here is to find the measure of CBD. So here we are here. I know that line FD is a midsegment because it cuts AE and CE into 2 equal pieces. And the side opposite that it doesn't touch is AC. So these 2 lines must be parallel to each other. Notice that we have a line that cuts through both parallel lines. So by the alternate interior angle theorem, I can say that FDB and CBD must be the same. So angle CBD must be congruent to angle FDB by the alternate interior angle theorem. So that means that the measure of angle CBD must be 26 degrees. Okay? Now we need to find the measure of MLK. So this angle here. Now if you notice, this is a midsegment, and this is the side opposite of them. So they must be parallel. Now remember, parallel lines cut by a transversal. Whoops, I'll use a different color with that. Okay, so this is my transversal. I know that this angle JMP must be congruent to MLK because of corresponding angles. So angle JMP is equal to angle MLK by the corresponding angle theorem. So that means the measure of angle MLK must be 102 degrees. Alright, so here's a word problem. It says in an A-frame support, the distance of P to Q is 46 inches. What is the length of ST if they are at the midpoints? So this would be a midsegment here, and it must be half of PQ, so ST must be 23, and don't forget your units here because it told us inches. Alright, so I want you to try problems 1 through 5 on your notes. Okay, I want you to pause it, give it a shot, and come back and listen to the answer. So go ahead and pause now. Alright, ED must be half of BC, so half of 20 is 10. AB must be twice the length of DF, so 2 times 7 is 14. BFE and FCD are corresponding angles. So they are both the same of 44 degrees. Alright, here we know that 3n plus 12 is twice the length of n plus 14. So I need to multiply this by 2 to get rid of the 1/2. 3n plus 12 equals 2n plus 28. A lot of you will forget to distribute. When you do 2 times n plus 14, don't forget to distribute to both terms. So then you move the 2n over, you move the 12 over, and you get n equals 16. For number 5, you'll see that UW is 9, so XY must be 4.5. VW, this is 4, so this must also be 4, therefore the total is 8. And XE must be half of that, so 4. So add it up, 4 plus 3 plus 4.5 gives you the perimeter of XYZ, which is 11.5. Alright, that's it for today.